get all your footage too. Like, I think it's like, get a copy of the hard drive after it's done as well. If you want it, if you're sure that you're, I don't know, sometimes it's like, maybe you're never going to use it for anything ever again too, but because it's like all the stuff that wound up on the cutting room floor, but maybe there's other things like in the future you want to like cut promotional material out of. It's like your footage, you own it, you paid for it.
See, I would never have known that, because like when you go to a photographer and you have photos done, you get to choose your whatever, like 10 photos, but you don't just get negatives of the whole shoot. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously depends on what you work out ahead of time, but when I've gone and had headshots done or whatever, that's how it's worked. I haven't just gotten to take all 200 photos in negative form. So I would never have known that.
It's always been how it's worked for me and stuff too. I don't mind. Like some people don't want it because they're like, no, we got it. Like what, record labels or something too. Like they'll have shelves and shelves of hard drives of videos and stuff too. And like people would, like Jonathan would keep them all, but it was never going to like recut them or whatever. So it's kind of just like the labor of stuff too. Like you're not really going to do, but you might want to, because especially an artist needs so much content now and stuff too. Like I think it's appropriate. Yeah, it's like you paid for it. Like get your footage, and if you want to cut little like teasers or something, you can do like little online trailers. You can do that from the videos.
Welcome to the Vocal Lab. I'm Sarah Ramsey, and this show aims to pull back the curtain on the entertainment industry, where veterans give up-and-coming artists some of the information they wish they'd had when they were just starting out. Sort of a music industry primer, if you will. Thanks for joining us on the Vocal Lab. This is actually part 2 of our interview. So if you haven't caught part 1 yet, head back to the episode right before this one and get all caught up, and then join us back here. We'll see you soon. Do you want to talk about, especially, our audience is maybe people who have not been through this process before and don't know what all the steps of it look like. So if you're going to work with an artist on a music video, what does that process look like, start to finish, for someone who's never undertaken it before? What should they expect?
Yeah, well, I think that usually the first step too, it depends. I will speak to it if you're kind of an artist who's independent, trying to work with a director on your own. Yep. If you're an independent artist and you're wanting to make a music video, so you might kind of go out and find some music video directors, or they might be film students or people who are coming up who you want to work with. And you reach out to them and you say, okay, I have a song. Hopefully you have an idea of what you want to spend at that point as well too. So you're like, I have this song, I want to put it out and I want to make a video for it. And I want to spend $1,000 to make that or whatever. And then you can maybe have, if you have sort of an idea of something that you think is cool or great, that you want to send along with that. Sometimes people will send out, what's like called a brief or something, that if an artist had an idea already in mind, they're like, well, I had written this song about, my breakup with my ex. So I'm trying to, do something that would and represent this. And I had a few ideas around it. It's totally appropriate to send that as well too. Because if that's an important thing that you want to see, send it up kind of up front. So usually it would, if you want to reach out, you'd reach out with that kind of information. And then maybe I think sometimes the next step that I like is, to have a call to sort of do stuff. Sometimes as well too, you could kind of, I would have a call first, but sometimes it would be like, and you could send all that stuff out as well too. And if you have no idea for your video and you just are like, I love your work, I have this song, I don't really know what to do with it, but like, do you have any ideas? You could send it to a director, and then a director would usually come up with, which would be a treatment. So that can be anything, like a music video treatment. And you can actually go, there's a really great resource called We Direct Music Videos, WeDirectMusicVideos.com, and they have a treatment database so that you can go on there and you can actually see for both directors and artists as well, like what a video treatment looks. And there's ones on all different levels, to like huge artists to little artists. You can just see like what that usually looks like. So a director will usually, once you've had a conversation or sent them the stuff and they say, yeah, I'm interested, let me come to you with some ideas. Usually a director will take the song away, spend a week or whatever, a couple of days. And then they'll come back with what is a treatment, which is kind of just like it can sometimes be just a jumping off point. Sometimes it's like exactly what you wind up shooting. And that'll just be an idea for a video, usually some visual references and that kind of stuff. The next step from there would be to sort of have a conversation. If you're the artist and you have questions about the treatment, it's totally appropriate to be like, okay, this and this are not really on the level of what I was seeing. Like, and then maybe you're like, okay, well, we won't do this scene. And hopefully you're finding a director who's coming a little back and forth. And I think that if people are really like pushing their will, just like I said, be aware of the give and take of the relationship. But, it is your name on it at the end of the day. So I think you're totally in the right to be able to be like, no, I think some of these things are missing the mark. And then hopefully what you kind of wind up is like what is like a final creative. So now you have something that everyone agrees is sort of like what we're going to work off of as we go into now what is like the production stage. So you'll go into at that point, great, we've got a budget that we agree we can make this idea for. Often people will ask for, so if you're working with a production company or producer, something like that, like if it's a small amount of money, if you're doing it kind of in more an official capacity, often it's not rare to get like 50% of the money up front and then 25% on rough cut. And then another 25% would be owed upon final delivery of the video. So if someone is asking you for 50% upfront, or sometimes even 75% if the budget's really small, that's not like something that's pretty normal as an artist to expect to have to pay that upfront, because a lot of the costs are going to be upfront, food and clothes and a location, stuff like that. So they're going to have to do that, and so then that way, the director, the producer, production company isn't doing that out of pocket. So they'll probably invoice you at that point once you've got a final creative, and there might be some sort of contract or not. It can be different. I'm speaking on like a sort of like if you're doing it kind of through the professional capacities as well too. If you're doing it with some friends and stuff too, they might be not. But if you're doing it through a professional company and you're spending their money, then they'll probably get like some sort of production contract that they'll speak to that money and how that flow will come, and also just things as well in there that are like, in a typical contract, you might see things too, like when those payouts are due, how many edits you get as well, and stuff like that too, that are just things like you can't drag out with like 30,000 revisions and notes on the video for 6 months. Like you will sort of be limited to like 3 or 4 passes on it or something. And most people will, if you're cool to work with, will do more. Like it's just sort of protecting.
But I actually think that's an important point to just pop out for artists who haven't done this before, is that you don't actually get innumerable edits without ending up paying more money for that. Like in your initial budget, you do get a little bit of back and forth in that final, but if you're going to go back and forth a million times, they're either going to say no, or you're going to pay more for that service. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And I do think that that's fair, because
I think so too.
It's if, I think most of the time it goes back and forth is because there's maybe some insecurity or breakdown sometimes in the chain of communication. I think it's also really good when you get a cut. If you're going to send it to people, send it to all the people and compile the notes, because then you kind of have them all in one. So then if you're doing a revision on the edit, you can kind of send everyone's notes at once, because then you don't like blow an edit when you're like, oh, someone else said this thing and that was good. And, so it's just sort of a smart way to do it. Anyhow, you'll probably sign some sort of contract. You'll probably pay up front. You'll pick a date to shoot and you'll start to work towards it. I think, again, too, it depends how much. Some artists want to be very involved, and some artists just want to be told, like if you really are, if it's a director that you love and you just like their art and you want to just be like, okay, cool, tell me where to show up and I'll be there, fine. If you want to be more involved, I think it's totally appropriate as well. And I think to just ask, be involved with the process too. And I think that most good directors, and as long as you're not like being really picky, again, too, it depends on the budget and stuff too, but you should ask for things as well too, like and approvals on locations and stuff like that too. Like if that's a big part of the story, you're the artist and you're going to be acting in your own video and you have a romantic lead guy who's an actor who's going to be with you. Like, I think it's very important that you should be involved in that casting process, because this is the guy who you're going to have to act with, maybe get like intimate with on screen. Like, you should be involved with that process. So depending on what the treatment is, you know, and then if it's a location, something, if it's like you're shooting somewhere really like key to the story, then trying to just be involved in that. And also, I think come to the table too. Things work better. It comes back to collaboration. Like, if you aren't kind of just like totally sitting back and just being like, show me more options for locations, show me more options for hot guys to, you know, smooth with on screen.
Suck face
be
with.
like, be like, just, you can also really come to the table, because I think that stuff's really helps as well. You're like, hey, you know what? Like, my dad's got this like cool barn that's actually like available to us. Like, we could use that as a location. Or my friend runs an acting school, and, you know, she knows a ton of actors. Why don't I ask her if she's got anyone who would be good for this? I think you should show up as well as much as you can if you want to be involved in that process too, to just try and be helpful as well. And then also just as much as possible to know what you want and what you like. I think for me, I always really prefer it when artists know what they like, because I don't want to tell you what your brand is or what you this, or, you know, so if you're feeling really like, and that's okay sometimes. And I think that people forget as well, you can say, I don't know the answer on this. That's fine. It is totally fine. It's almost better than kind of just like going back and forth or something, to just be like, you know what, I don't know. I hadn't thought about what I want to do with that. And then, you know, take a time, go away, think about it, whatever, and then try and come to something as well too. So yeah, I think throughout that pre-production process, there should be a lot of back and forth on both things. And hopefully, yes, then the shoot day's approaching, you'll sometimes have a wardrobe fitting, maybe not. If you're doing a stylist, those kinds of things, that's pretty typical as well for like something you do there. So you'll have like a location picked out. You don't usually get a big say in who the like crew is, other than the director. They'll kind of like come with their people. I do think it's appropriate for you to have say in like what would be your glam team. So if there's like, you know, if you do have a makeup artist like that you like, it's just very specific too. So that sometimes falls outside the budget. Sometimes it's not always included to have like makeup and wardrobe like as part of the budget, especially if they're people that you're picking too, because, you know, I think sometimes productions just want that to be the cheapest person, but you might have like, you know, someone who's there better.
So those are pieces that you want to clarify back when you're looking at any contract details, right?
Yeah. And things as well. And like just even asking that up front too, to be like, what will this budget include as well? How many edit revisions is it going to include? What are the, even like, what am I going to get in the, you know, the end? And yeah, it probably, you know, like more and more often, just because budgets are shrinking, it won't include that glam side of it. So if you want to hire a stylist or buy your wardrobe or do hair and makeup, like that often comes outside of the budget. And that's just a good thing to know up front, because you have to take that into your accounts. Cause you could easily spend another couple $1,000s if you wanted to on a stylist and clothes and hair and makeup. So if that's something you want to do, really you get into production. A typical music video day shoot is extremely long, as you know. It's like usually like a minimum of 13 hours, like 12 working hours and a lunch. So
sometimes more like 24.
Sometimes like 24. I've been on a few 24-hour ones. Yeah, that's too much. But yeah, it's not abnormal for it to be like, and you'll get like half an hour lunch and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's usually like 13, 14 hours that you're going to be there. And often 18 hours is not unheard of. Like that's kind of the zone of stuff. So I always say to artists too, like, get a good night's sleep if you can before expect it to be long.
Yeah. And take into account, like, if I'm referencing some of Josh's videos here, but like when there's scenes that happen in daylight hours and darkness hours, that is automatically going to make the shoot longer. So know that going in, right?
Yeah. It's just going to be long, and things move slowly. And like, weirdly, the higher budget you get and you get bigger crews and stuff, you get bigger lighting setups, you get more people and extras and stuff, and things move even slower. Yeah. Like, it can take hours to shoot something that would last for 20 seconds on screen. It's insane. Yeah. So, it's just a long process. Don't even worry about it. It's just going to be a long process. I always do say, like, show up on time too, because it's your money at the end of the day. Like, it's your money, even if it's record, it's your money, and it's your thing. So like, if people wind up going into overtime and stuff like that, like, it's, you pay for it, like, at the end of the day. So, and I think I think it can be sometimes scary as well too, to, hopefully you do have people maybe who you trust as well on set. I think it's totally, hopefully you have a really good relationship with your director at this point. So they're going to be, you trust that they're getting what you want as well too. But I think that sometimes it's okay it's always okay to ask, like, hey, can I see that back? And they'll play it back on a monitor for you or something too, just to make sure that you're like, you should be able to ask that. And anyone who's like, no, we can't show you that, is like, that's not the way it should be. Yeah, they should show you stuff, so that hopefully that makes you feel more comfortable, and you can see, like, okay, good. Like, this feels like what I was going for. It doesn't feel totally off base. And and then, hopefully you do have people as well on your team who you trust. I think it's appropriate if you have people, like, if it is your friend doing your hair and makeup who's come to set, and she's someone that you love and trust, or he's someone that you love and trust, then you can, look to them, and they're going to, like, they know what you really want. So they'll come and sort of speak up to that too, or they'll be like, no, good. It's like good. Or you could, if that's a manager, if that's a parent, a best friend, like, you can bring those people to set, I think too, if it's helping you. And, that's fair. That's like what you should do, especially if you're an independent artist too. It's sometimes, just as long as they're on your team and you trust them. Yeah. So yeah, your day you'll go into hair and makeup. You'll, hopefully you've kind of gotten an idea of, like, how the day will go. Like, I think it's fair to ask before a shoot if you're anxious about it. They'll be like, okay, here's kind of the schedule. So just so you know, we're going to do some, like, singing shots to start. Then we're going to do this and this. You never really have to sing for real in a music video. They'll do playback, so you just sing along to it. They'll have a number, and you'll go through the scenes through the day, and there'll be actually a ton of waiting around. So that's also very normal. So you'll be waiting and then it'll be like
exhausting.
Yeah, you'll be in some cold room and somewhere just waiting, and then they'll be like, "You're needed right now," and you'll have to run to set, and then it'll be like, they call it the hurry up and wait. And so, hopefully you're kind of going through the day, and I think you can just take comfort in knowing as well, from someone who's made well over 100 music videos at this point too, things will go wrong. It happens. It just does. There's something on every shoot and stuff. Like, try not to freak out about it. I think it's important to have, both for directors and artists as well, to sort of like core thing, like hierarchy of what you need to get out of the day almost as well. So it's like, okay, like, we didn't get this or whatever, like, the horse wrangler didn't show up because his car broke down, so we don't have the horse for the shoot. But is that okay? Like, can we make do without it? Or is it, like, the most important thing? Or is there, if it is the most important thing, can we plan for backup beforehand? Or is it just like, so long as we get a performance that's great and we get these story bits, like, it's fine without the horse? Like, just sort of knowing, at least, like, if you get this out of the video, you have a video and it's still going to be great and hit the main marks. And then you can kind of like, when things go, or if things are starting to get really into overtime or something, whatever, or someone doesn't show up for some reason, you can kind of be like, okay, great. Like I've had it before too. Yeah. It's like, oh, the guy who's supposed to bring the picture car, like the luxury cool car we were going to have, like didn't show up. Can we use this crew guy's truck? Is that fine? Like and then kind of being like, oh, it's like not as good, but then kind of reminding myself and the artist as well to like, the video is not about the car or the truck necessarily. Like it was a nice eye candy piece, but the video is about making you look good and the story that we're trying to do. So like, there's the things that sometimes you can get hung up on that seem important, but they're not. So just to kind of keep those in mind, like no one's going to look at the video and be like, oh, it was so great. But like that truck was kind of like, meh. Like it's just not the thing. So I just think that that's also important to know. And it's kind of, because it can feel very high stress on set sometimes. So just keep those things in mind as you're going through it. And then to keep going with this, then you get into the post-production. Yep. I think usually what will happen too is that a director will either work with an editor or they'll edit themselves and they'll take the footage away and you can expect a rough cut in like a week to 2 weeks or whatever you guys talked about beforehand. I do think it's important to talk about that beforehand, especially if you as an artist like kind of are working towards a release plan to let people know and be like, okay, I need the final delivered video by here, and then work back from there. Usually you'll get a rough cut, and sometimes it depends on your relationship. You can actually go and sit in on an edit. That's not crazy either. You'll go wherever and you can go sit. You can talk about stuff together and with the editor or director and look at the shots. And if there's something to you, like, can I see different takes of this? You can ask that. Or you can just get a cut and then you can, like I said, share it to all your friends or people that you wanted to see it, collect all the notes, send those back, and then you'll get a new cut and you'll go back and forth until you're happy with the cut. From there, it'll often go to like a colorist, which is like kind of this magical process where they'll like kind of the same way that you do like on Instagram or whatever too, how you can like put photo filters and stuff too. So they can actually do that of coloring and visual effects. So if you have any visual effects that need to be done, happens after the edit is locked. So then they'll go, and if you have green screen, they'll do that after the cut is locked. So it's really hard sometimes. You'll have to lock an edit with just green screen behind everyone. And then you send it to VFX and color. So they'll do any visual effects after that point. You'll still get, you should still get passes and feedback on that. And then, and then coloring too, it's the same thing. It's kind of this like really great thing because most cameras shoot on digital now. They come in this like very raw way, but you can do crazy cool things. Like you can actually like isolate colors and just like make things look like, if you wanted to make it look more old timey or just those things as well, or more filmic, you can do it.
All I can think about right now is like Wizard of Oz and going from black and white to color, or like you go to Emerald City and everything is green.
Yeah. And you can
the digital version of that, right?
And you can do that. And often I think people will say like, oh, well, we can fix that in like color or online. And that's what they're talking about too. Because some things you can actually do. It's depending on your budget. Like it might just be kind of like the director editors, like doing like a little bit of color tweaking on their own, or they're doing the visual effects on their own. But if you get those higher budgets, like we actually do a separate day with a person whose full-time job is a colorist, and you go to a studio with them and you sit and they color the footage, and they can do like actual crazy miracle stuff. So if you have a blue shirt, they can be like, well, I'll make that a green shirt. Like, and they can like do things like if your teeth are really stained in yellow and stuff too, they can actually do things like make them look whiter in footage. Or if you have a pimple on your forehead, they can like get rid of it. So
that's amazing to me when it's like still photography, that's one thing, but when it's like motion photography and they can still do those things, that is a little bit of mind blown to me.
Yeah, it's really cool. And no one knows that even that's a job too. It's like you can do that. And that's kind of the last step. Then usually then they'll, usually deliver you if you have certain file formats that you've asked for or whatever, because you're going to put your video out on MTV or YouTube or whatever you need. They should provide you with those files. And then you can, I always think it's a good idea too, to like, you might, maybe you just get all your footage too. Like, I think it's like, get a copy of the hard drive after it's done as well. If you want it, if you're sure that you're, I don't know, sometimes it like, maybe you're never going to use it for anything ever again too, but because it's like all the stuff that wound up on the cutting room floor, but maybe there's other things like in the future you want to like cut promotional material out of. It's like your footage, you own it, you paid for it, like take it.
See, I would never have known that, because like when you go to a photographer and you have photos done, you get to choose your whatever, like 10 photos, but you don't just get negatives of the whole shoot. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously it depends on what you work out ahead of time, but when I've gone and had headshots done or whatever, that's how it's worked. I haven't just gotten to take all 200 photos in negative form. So I would never have known that.
It's always been how it's worked for me and stuff too. I don't mind. Like some people don't want it because they're like, no, we got it. Like what, you know, record labels or something too. Like they'll have shelves and shelves of hard drives of videos and stuff too. And like people would, you know, like Jonathan would keep them all, but it was never going to like recut them or whatever. So it was, it's kind of just like the labor of stuff too. Like you're not really going to do, but yeah, you might want to, because especially an artist needs so much content now and stuff too. Like I think it's appropriate. Yeah. It's like you paid for it, like get your footage. And if you want to cut little like teasers or something, you can do like little online trailers. You can do that from the video itself, or you can use the footage or something. I would, maybe some directors mind. I don't mind. It's like, do what you want. And you paid this money, and I know how much it is for artists too. So sometimes you want to just like milk the shit out of that footage because you're like, I got it. But yeah, that's the process, I would say, beginning. That's
like, I really appreciate your generosity with that, Emma, because there were a lot of pieces of that I didn't even know. And I've watched people close to me go through that process lots of times, and there were details that I had no idea. So I think that's really important information for artists to know what all those steps are going into it for themselves. Yeah.
And I know it can be scary. It can be scary, but I think those are the things too. I always just encourage artists as well. Like, don't be afraid to advocate for yourself ever, and make sure you have people that you trust there with you as well. Hopefully it is the director and that team specifically that you've built a relationship before you wind up on set with. But then, other people as well, just that you trust.
You have talked along the way about budgets, and small budgets being sometimes non-existent, small budgets sometimes being $0 budgets, and big budgets. What would you sort of define for someone who has no idea what those dollar amounts are? Falls into the realm of small budget, what falls into the realm of big budget in terms of actual dollar figures, and how does the process of video production differ, if there's anything further to flesh out than what you've already spoken to in today's landscape when you're working on a small budget and when you're working on a big budget?
A sort of small budget too, I do think is like, it's tough. It is tough. I think really to get any sort of like crew-ish where you want to have a director and a producer, I think you are kind of looking at minimum like a $5,000 to $10,000. It's just $1,000. That's sort of a small budget, but professionally made video. Not to say that you can't do things for less, but it becomes, at that point, you start to fall under that like $5,000 realm. It's more like you're probably going to get more of like a videographer. Like you might get a person and a camera and like maybe another person or something, but you're not really going to get like necessarily like stuff that's, like you're not going to get a crew or stuff like that per se. So I'd say like the 5 to 10 is kind of where you start to get into that game of like, you can do something with that. Like you can do something. I think, sort of that's like kind of a lot of the stuff with like what grants give and stuff now will start sort of at that 10 to 15K. That's like a low budget music video is 10 to 15K. And yeah, again, that's kind of usually a $10,000 to $15,000 music video gets you sort of like the basics. It gets you a small crew, little bit of gear, a location, people are fed and paid, and you will get that process that I spoke to where you should hopefully get like a treatment, a nice professional one shoot day, and a post-production and a professional product in that zone. But yeah, budgets can range drastically. If you are Drake or Justin Bieber or whoever, you will be at a multi-million-dollar music video. That is what that is. I think, once it really can go up depending on what you're wanting to do. I think, it's not like for a long time, videos were, there was different grants in Canada and stuff too. So it'd be like $30,000, $50,000 to $50,000. That's kind of in the middle zone. There's, I would say like most music videos are for artists that are signed to record labels and are sort of like looking to make something with production companies that are, on a more established level, would be between 50 and 100. Yeah. Like that's, if I'm working with artists in the States, I see a lot of budgets in that zone. Okay. There's not a lot of artists who can afford over $100,000. To be honest, like that starts to get there. Then you get into like, you are an established artist. Like even things too, artists that are like fairly big, like I'm seeing like Charlie Puths and stuff like coming through with like 80,000 US or 100,000 US. Like that's kind of what he would spend on a video. And yeah, that's a big artist. So the budgets aren't super, super huge. And then, yeah, you kind of get into those like superstardom levels or the Cardi B's of it or the Megan Thee Stallions and stuff that will spend, a couple $100,000 minimum. Lil Nas X, you're looking at a $500,000, $600,000 music video and up from there. Yeah.
I think that's great because that gives a way better understanding of like, you can do it for nothing and you can do it for multi-million dollars and you get different things along the way for each of those price tags. So it's not that anything is inaccessible. It's, it doesn't mean that just because you don't have much money to spend means you just straight up can't get a music video done. You can, you just have to adjust your expectations about how that process unfolds.
You said it exactly. It's adjusting your expectations. If you are spending, again, too, $5,000 to $10,000, you may think it's a lot and it may be a lot for you as well, too. But you should expect that you are still going to have to like collaborate and maybe you have to pull favors on your end as well, too, to get a free location, to get some stuff. Because it goes quick and it's not actually that much money to a production. And so you should expect to just have to come to the table more collaboratively and expect to probably not have all the comforts and stuff too. If you pay $1 million for a music video, you can expect, kind of whatever you want. You can show up whenever you want and with however many people you want, and you should expect your own trailer and you should expect it to be stocked with, Grey Goose vodka. And then that's like what you can get for that. That is your Drake experience. And so that's fair. You're spending $1 million.
But most people are not going to end up coming to their first video with that experience. Let's just say. Just don't expect your dressing room, period, let alone Grey Goose is all I'm saying. And chances are it will not be glamorous. It is not necessarily a glamorous nor like always fun process because the hours are long. You're probably cold. Like you're probably, in like some warehouse or some like whatever. And it's like, it's not, and you're eating or drinking Shasta cola or whatever because you can't afford even like on brand like stuff for food. So somebody's mom made sandwiches.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's, and as long as you expect that, you can have a great day with it. It's just, yeah, it's not, it's sometimes it's just not, it's not that glamorous is all.
Yeah. It's just about adjusting expectations, I think. So you've worked with a lot of artists over time, over 100 music videos. There's got to be a good roster of artists in there. In your experience, what does an artist bring, or how do they prepare to make the overall experience and product the best possible project? Or phrased another way, what do you wish more artists did before they were on set with you in order for all of you to have the best experience and the best video in the end?
I do think it's just having thought about what you want and knowing what you want and you don't want. It's really helpful if you prepare mood boards, if you prepare things, send videos. You're like, I like this thing from this. I like what they did with the lighting here. Know what you like so that you can have all of that sorted before you get to set. So, because, there's so many ways to interpret creative as well, too. Like something that can read on the page can be, then you show up and it's like lit really dark and spooky or something. And you're like, oh, like I didn't picture it this way. But if you can talk about, like lighting references, like just tonal references, like you love what Selena Gomez did in her last video. And you're like, this was that cool lighting. Like, could we do something? Or I like this and like that. Just know what you like. Cause, time is so precious on set as well too. The more conversations you can have before, when there's not a click, like a ticking clock of money being spent, is good. So just do that. Yeah, I get Pinterest boards, everything. It's all good.
Yeah, and I can imagine that talking through some of those pieces about, I like this sort of, color palette, this sort of mood board, this sort of lighting treatment. I like what happened in this video. And then you talk about the story treatment. And sometimes those things are not a cohesive experience, right? And that's a way better thing to talk about before you're on set.
Yes.
Right? Making sure those things actually mesh together.
Spend that time in that creative development phase, I think, and really make sure that you're speaking the same language there. And if you're just not, if the director just seems like they are on a different planet from you as far as like what they're going for, and they just keep bringing back stuff that you're saying one thing and they're saying the other, that might be your place to just be like, you know what? I just think this isn't the right fit, and you go somewhere else too, because that's what it is. They do the same on their end.
Is there anything else that you think is important for like a first-time artist to know before making a video that we haven't talked about already?
Things that we haven't talked. I don't know. I mean, like making a video and stuff too. I imagine artists now are like, this is projection, but I assume that they're pretty used to shooting a lot of their own content too, because how much TikTok and all the stuff and socials. So you might have a good idea of that as well. I'd say those things are helpful to sort of just practice as well. Like if you want to be, if you're not already doing that, I imagine you probably are too. Like, so just practice sort of that being on camera type of thing too, build your confidence as well. It's helpful. I think you can go and I think maybe it takes a little steam out of it too. Cause like it can feel like, I even get that sometimes too. You're like in front of the camera suddenly, you're like, woo, like you get like that, like sudden, like overwhelmed kind of feeling too, to just, the more you can submerge yourself in that sort of familiarity with your on camera stuff, if that's what you want to do as an artist. Some artists never are in their own videos and they don't have to do it. But if you want to be someone who's forward facing, I think that those are kind of helpful things too, to just like as much as possible, like just get yourself comfortable with being in front of the lens. And again too, hopefully as well, like if you're on set, hopefully you've got a great director who's already a cheerleader for you. But if you're feeling like, they might be a great director, but they're not a cheerleader, like, yeah, bring a friend, bring a person, just bring someone who's like, who could be like there and be a hype man for you and stuff too. And like really make you like, just be confident and like, or who might know your style or know your on camera stuff. Or if you have certain things that you're aware of that you do on camera too, you can be like, oh, like I know, because I've shot myself in a bunch of social videos, that sometimes like I will talk too fast or I'll like hunch over or something, or my posture can get bad on camera. So you can just be like, yo, like friend or whoever, like I know this about myself. Like, can you just keep an eye on my posture? Because like, sometimes I'll get bad on that. It's kind of a weird sort of self-awareness to develop. But
I think that is really important. It's funny. I talk to students about this just from a general performance point of view. I mean, we're talking mostly about music performance, but I often encourage students to turn on their phone and film themselves singing, because I can tell you that you're doing something, like as a voice teacher, I can tell you that you're doing something and it won't land the same way as it will when you see yourself doing something.
Mm-hmm.
And so practicing, and furthermore, the magic isn't going to happen for the first time when you get on stage. The magic is practiced. So by the same, point of view, exactly what you're saying, like you have to practice the magic before you get in front of the camera to shoot your video. If that's what you're doing, you want to practice that, because it's unlikely to be majestic for the first time in that context. So practice that context at home where it's safe to do so, and it's safe to fuck up and make mistakes and look silly, and work that all out in your bedroom until it starts to feel more comfortable.
Yeah, and it's weirdly like sometimes a little different too. Like things play so big on camera that wouldn't play, like stuff that feels really big on stage sometimes feels like too big on camera and stuff like that. So it's just a little bit of a different vibe.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and things like, so I shot a promo video for a band that I was in one time, and I had to, it was like the band we were playing, right? Because it was a promo video for a band. And I had a wireless microphone, and I didn't see any of the footage as we were shooting. I only saw it afterwards. So great point to like, I wish I'd seen it as we were shooting, because on stage, I hold my microphone a certain way. But what I saw when I saw myself on camera is that it completely blocked my mouth on stage, which is not how you want it to translate on video. You want to be able to see my mouth as I'm singing. So that's great for sound on stage, not great for being on camera. So those are the things you want to work out ahead of time, or have somebody there who's going to tell you, or both.
Yeah. And to be honest too, it'd be hard if it's an artist that I haven't worked with before to be like, maybe this is their thing. Like, I don't want to like step on their stuff if they're like, but if someone's like, no, this is not, because sometimes people have like beautiful stuff. Like if it was like Celine Dion's like doing her chest hitting thing, you'd be like, is that weird? Is that just like her thing? Or should I tell her that she should stop doing that? Like,
I probably know that you're thumping your chest.
Yeah. I'd be like, something, could we do like just one without the chest thumping option or something, But she'd be like, no, that's like my thing,
Yeah.
And who am I to tell you that's not your thing? So,
fair.
Works. Yeah.
If someone wanted to get into directing, what kind of pathway would you suggest?
I would suggest going to go try and volunteer on some film sets first. I think that's a good way to do it. And I can think, and it'll give you an idea of the lifestyle, which is also a part of it too. Because the hours are really long as well. And you can also reach out to directors and ask to shadow as well. That's a nice way to do it. I'll take on shadows often, and other directors can just do that. And you can go and see if it's like, I think you'll have an idea. If you like, you're there and you're like, this feels tedious and boring. And like, I thought it was going to be glamorous and cool, and it's not, because you'll be like, okay, great. And then, yeah, there are school pursuits that are worthwhile doing. That's also a fine option too. Or you can kind of work your way up like I did on different things. There's a number of ways into it, but I would say like before you go to school or before you just try and see if it's something that you like actually like the like day to day in and out of and not like the theoretical stuff of it too, because there's an idea of like the glamour of it, but there's a lot of tedium and punishingly long hours, and you have to sort of take that stuff with it. And if it's just not, it's the same thing. It's not as glamorous as maybe you think, or it's not all like exciting stuff. And it's just good to like know that early on. If you're like, oh no, actually, I'm glad I didn't go to school for this for 4 years, because like I could never live this lifestyle where I work 12-hour days all the time.
Is there anything that you see often misunderstood by artists or management, or labels, or like any pieces of the team on the artist side when it comes to the world of music videos?
On the artist side that are misunderstood, I do think one of the big things is how far the money goes as well too. I do see that from people around all the time. They're like, well, we're spending $10,000. Like we should be able to get much more than this. And it's not that I'm scamming you or anyone scamming you. It just is, film is it's expensive. It's expensive to do stuff, and one stupid piece of gear costs $600 to rent for a day. So it's just like what it is. So that's often misunderstood as how far your money will go, which is unfortunately not very far. I mean, I just think that's another thing that's misunderstood. And not to say that there aren't people out there who you should be aware of as well too. Sometimes people are scammers. There can be people who call themselves directors and will, if it feels wrong, trust your gut on that stuff too. Or they'll take a budget and they'll keep 80% of it and spend 20% on your thing, on what actually goes on screen. That's not cool. I think that's quite immoral actually, because you're undermining someone in a way that's just not fair.
Is that a reasonable thing for an artist to ask for a breakdown, financial breakdown?
Yep. You can ask for a budget. That's totally appropriate. And you can, you can take that if it's going to have stuff in there. Like it's tough because you can even ask for a budget after the fact. If you suspect something went on, you can ask for receipts. Often you need that for some of the grant stuff anyways, because they're going to want to, if you're a Canadian artist, they're going to want to see that the money was spent in Canada on Canadian things, because that's the only thing that you can spend money on. So it's, if you feel like something's going on there and you're like, I don't really see where my money was spent, you can ask for that too. And
grants in Canada, that's all through Factor, right?
Factor is, yes. And then there's also the MVP grant as well now too, which is through RBCX Music. And they give out $15,000 music video grants and then do 10 recipients per round. And I think there's 5 rounds a year. So the RBC MVP grant is the other one for it. That's apart from Factor. And that's an interesting one because, Factor is entirely done on the artist side. MVP is kind of, it's you actually submit with a treatment and a director and stuff too.
Okay.
Yep. And it's sweet. And in BC and Alberta, there's sometimes the STORYHIVE grant as well that Telus puts out too, that will occasionally have a music video round where they'll give $20,000 grants out or $10,000 grants out too.
Okay.
So that's another one to be aware of, is the Telus STORYHIVE.
Good to know. And are there any grants, like U.S. grants for U.S. listeners? Or is that not a thing in the USA?
I know that there are. I'm not as familiar with them as well too.
Okay.
From my understanding, they tend to be more on they're more on the state level too. So, and they're like more arts council sort of grants and stuff as well. It depends what state you're in. But I know that there are a number. And so I just encourage people to kind of look at their local like arts funding as well, because it's kind of a gray area sometimes that crosses over between what's music video and short film and stuff like that too. And you can get like what is marketing budgets, and music videos can fall under that expense because that's a marketing tool.
Yeah.
So if you get a budget for marketing, then which is kind of like what it is, with factors considered a marketing.
You want to talk about weirdest gig, best gig?
No, I don't think I.
No, you don't?
I don't think you should.
All right, fair enough.
I overdrink sometimes.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, to round it out, you've collaborated with a lot of artists over the years. That had to come from a place of community, mutual respect, and support. Mm-hmm. In an industry that can be incredibly competitive, what has your experience been, and how do you think we can foster a more supportive community?
It's so hard to say too. I think that it's on such a personal level too. It's just, it took me time to understand that someone else's success didn't detract from my success, right? There is enough to go around. So, and that applies to all of this as well too. And your energy is never well spent. Like if you're on this road and stuff, if you're looking sideways to see what everyone else is doing, you're not looking at the finish line. You're not looking at your own feet in front of you. So it's sort of a weird personal thing of just that. And I do believe that it's just like, so there's this personal level things too, but also it's just, hopefully the more you give, it is a small community and no one can do it alone. So by putting that good out there, kind of, you help people out. It, in my experience, has come back to me. And even helping out other directors and stuff and working with other directors who you might see as competition has actually been wildly helpful, because there's things too where you have, sometimes they can't do a job, or maybe they don't fit with something. And so they'll recommend me for it and that kind of stuff. And so I don't know, just trying to be as generous as you can. It usually winds up giving back. I've found.
I would agree with that. So where can people find you, Emma? Web, socials, upcoming projects? What do you want to talk about?
EmmaHiggins.com, and my handle is @EmmaAverage. And it's, find me there. I've got kind of a few of my videos up there, and the YouTube, the Vimeo, I'm on there.
And is that all at Emma Average?
It is, yeah.
Well, that makes it nice and easy, doesn't it? Ties it up with a bow.
It sure does, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Emma. This has been super, super informative, and I think hugely valuable to people who have not been through this process before.
Oh, thank you for doing this. I do actually think it's really important stuff, and I hope that people can take things from it and protect themselves. And to be honest as well, too, if people do listen and they want to reach out, send me a DM or an email, and I can always answer things as well, too. I'm happy to do that if someone's like feeling like something's weird, or they just have a question about something. Like I'm happy to answer direct messages and stuff like that on things too. Cause, it can be scary. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's nice to see you.